Good morning and welcome to our Monday, February 28th, 2022 strategic planning meeting. It is 9:02 and we'll officially get started at this point. We have all three commissioners are present, our executive management team. We are being joined by Carl Otterstrom. And Carl, I'm not sure who else is joining you today.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Hamid Hajafari is also joining us. He's a senior transit planner with STA.
Okay, very good. So we will let you go ahead and kick this off with your presentation from STA this morning.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Commissioner and others on the call from the county and other public members of the public, that is. So this is a presentation covering our I90 Valley High Performance Transit Project. And this is a project, if you go to the next slide, that is part of the STA's, one more slide, please. STA Moving Forward plan, which calls for over 25 different projects worth of investment around the region over a 10-year period. Many people are familiar with the City Line, also the West Plains Transit Center, the Moran Station Park and Ride. Those are other projects within the STA Moving Forward plan. And this project actually is a compendium of projects along the I90 Valley Corridor, basically Interstate 90, including a new transit center, expanded park and ride capacity east of Sullivan Road, new direct nonstop peak hour service between Liberty Lake and Spokane, night and weekend service, and then on a pilot basis, extend service into Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls, subject to a partnership agreement with entities in Kootenai County. Next slide, please. So those elements I just shared, we also envision other components to be considered as part of our planning effort and potentially part of the construction of the project. This includes other high performance transit stops along the corridor. And when we envision high performance transit as having a higher level of amenities and infrastructure at a stop to improve the customer experience. The I90 Valley service architecture really is defining how everything in the valley works together to provide this higher frequency, reliable service on I90. Potentially an Argonne Road park and ride and flyer station, and then even considering what future facilities may exist in Kootenai County at some point, and the network redesign, the connections with other routes. We have a total program for this for just under $4.5 million. This includes $7.5 million state grant, an existing federal grant plus a prospective federal grant totaling $1.84 million, and then the remainder, just over $5 million, are local funds from STA Moving Forward. And that's something, as we've implemented STA Moving Forward, we've sought opportunities to leverage the STA Moving Forward dollars to bring in other state and federal dollars, and this is no exception to that. The overall project includes the design, engineering, right-of-way acquisition, and construction of the transit facilities. And these benefit employees around the region, not just people who live in the valley, but also in employment sites in the valley and connections to other parts of Spokane County and Kootenai County. Next slide. So early on, the current phase of the activity is what we call a corridor development plan. And this lays out, this planning effort lays out the overall goals and objectives and then defines different elements, the type, size, and location of new facilities, and refines our cost estimates before we go into acquiring property and conducting design, full design. And so as we've set out this corridor development plan, we've identified a series of objectives to support economic vitality and transportation equity, to provide integrated solutions that support safe and healthy transportation options, engage our community agency partners, the public, and to serve as a model for the community benefits of the region and the interstate cooperation that could exist as part of this. And then ultimately advance service that is and improvements that are safe, cost conscious, high performing, and resilient, and reflect and enhance community identity and environment. Slide. And so why are we doing this project? One more slide, please. The region is growing. We're growing as a community rapidly, more rapidly than many of the growth forecasts had assumed when we actually put this project together. Liberty Lake is growing very quickly relative to its existing population, but there is significant growth elsewhere in this corridor, in Spokane Valley, in unincorporated parts of Spokane County, in the Valley, Greater Valley area. There are some hot spots along Sprague Avenue. There's more infill of multifamily housing along Argonne Road, the industrial park, and that would include, in this case, extending east to the new Amazon facility off of Barker and the growth of industrial sites in that area. The Meadowood Technology Campus, which kind of is boom and bust, but we fully expect that to Greenstone is pretty good at breathing new life into facilities, and that will continue to evolve and generate demand for transportation. And then the Harvard Road and Country Vista areas, either side of the freeway, but particularly on the south side where there is quite a bit of multifamily and higher density mixed use zoning. Kootenai County is growing at a faster percentage rate relative to their existing population, and is one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the United States right now. So despite the fact that it is outside of STA's service area, it's something we can't ignore, especially as more and more people have their lives connected across the state line, and businesses are interested in attracting employees across these two county area. Next slide. And we're feeling that growth. I don't need to tell anyone really who's driven I-90 during peak period that traffic has become kind of just more consistently congested. There are various hotspots that are listed here, and the interesting thing is we've always been accustomed to Spokane having being the commuting center, people coming to Spokane for jobs, but the fastest rate of growth along that the county line, the state line rather, is people traveling from Spokane east into Spokane, into Kootenai County in terms of a percentage growth. And so it doubled basically in the last decade compared to a 50% growth of people coming from Kootenai County to Spokane County. Next slide. So our corridor development planning process, next slide. Often in a planning process, you see exercises like this where there's a funnel. There's a lot of pieces to this, but just broadly, we are looking at many different tools to improve bus service, to attract more riders, to support the growth of the area. And those tools are being put into this funnel, a process to identify. First, we went through a whole list of scenarios, funneling down to a preferred scenario. That preferred scenario has some alternative facility locations and details on the network connections because of those locations. And we're evaluating that and sharing that with the public and getting feedback before we come up later this spring with a draft corridor development plan that would be finalized this summer. Next slide. This just shows that same funnel, those same colors from when we began this effort, spring of 2021 to the present day, and then into the summer of 2022, with the goal then to move into design and implementation. And we have a technical advisory committee as part of this. This includes engineering staff from Spokane County, and we have a public open house on Wednesday, which I'll speak to more in just a minute. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the scenarios, and this just lays out those scenario development. We actually had up to 14 different scenarios at one point. We scored them, we shortlisted, and then once we did a land analysis, it was clear that it was preferable just because of the number of iterations this that could exist. We really needed to focus on a short list of land locations that then align with a preferred scenario that again, like I said, becomes the basis of three alternatives that are based on the site locations. Next slide, please. So the preferred scenario looks at these route connections we can create, how to balance speed and access. And so if we connect everything with one route, then that route has to stop more often, which means it's going to be slower for somebody who wants to get downtown or elsewhere. And so really balancing that speed, that access we could provide with stops with more time on the freeway, and really those competing demands introduce the idea that there isn't one, let's say like the city line is one route across, or division bus rapid transit is one solid corridor. But when we have a freeway environment with many different destinations, it's more ideal to distinguish those different routes, to have different purposes and a different number of stops or different stops in general, so that you're not bogging down that experience of traveling fast with having to make lots of stops. So we have three routes, and we'll layer these. So next slide, please. So here's our overall I-90 corridor. While our focus is the I-90 Valley in terms of new improvements, this corridor in our long-range comprehensive plan is actually called out as from the airport to Coeur d'Alene. So we show airport to Coeur d'Alene. We also show West Plains Transit Center. Next slide. We'll actually layer on. These are the locations of potential facilities. Next slide. We'll add some highlights to the area around Mirabeau, Barker Road, and Liberty Lake. Those are our primary locations for infrastructure as part of STA moving forward, but we are looking at Argonne Road and State Line as potential future investments beyond the current scope of STA moving forward, subject to funding. Now, this first line that shows up, that purple, is one of those three lines that is part of the preferred architecture. And this is envisioned to go from Liberty Lake using the local street, so it has local access. And then it serves the Mirabeau Park and Ride, which is an interesting location. Over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of housing around there. Now there's a hotel, there'll be a future civic center, a performing arts center there. And then continue this to downtown Spokane in the kind of normal way. We are showing the concept of also connecting to a facility at Argonne Road in the future, but then continuing this service to the airport and to West Plains Transit Center. So actually going beyond what we had envisioned in Connect Spokane. One of the chief differences now is the existence of tremendous amount of light industrial along Geiger Boulevard. So this would run from the airport to the West Plains Transit Center via basically Spotted Road to Geiger Boulevard, and connect all those jobs that are there, so people from Spokane Valley can have a one-seat ride to the airport and West Plains Transit Center. Now, it's still, again, competing that the needs with people who are trying to get downtown. So there are other stops in the way, in the middle, but that's one of the reasons it is express essentially from Mirabeau downtown, and then it actually would get back on the freeway to go to the airport. Next slide adds another one of these corridors, this blue line starting in State Line and serving Appleway Boulevard through the east end of Liberty Lake, and then to the Green Acres area before getting onto I-90, and then running express to downtown. And what's envisioned here actually is not ending at the plaza, but instead actually extending this to the North Bank and potentially in the area of the Value Village site, where the PFD and the county have worked together for the PFD to purchase land for a shuttle park. Well, it's additional parking for all those facilities, but also be used for our shuttle park service. But the notion is that this would have a stop. It would use this current bus stops at Monroe and Broadway. So this would have a direct connection to the county campus, as well as the sporting and entertainment district off of Boone Avenue at Howard. And then the last line would extend from the center of the valley, from the Green Acres area along Sprague, and then take the freeway from the Sprague exit or interchange, and then serve the university district. And this would contribute to connectivity in that area. From the U district, those individuals could take the city line into downtown. One of the things it also does is none of these three routes would actually end at the plaza. And this helps as we look at overall growth of transit service to kind of work within the capacity we have at the plaza. Okay, next slide. And this shows, oh, there was one last piece there. Sorry, we will go back. Then it shows a dashed green line showing that prospective partnership with Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls to extend service into Idaho. Again, that would be a 2-year experiment, but if it goes well, then we would consider as a region if that should continue. So next steps on the next slide. So we're evaluating these scenarios. We intend to come up with a preferred scenario with the evaluation process. There's a number of factors from ridership to cost to scalability to overall environmental and transportation impacts. And then also look at, in that process, consider other transit priority measures. Now, any of these corridors, these routes would benefit from other transit priority measures on I90. People are familiar with different kinds of bus-only lanes or high occupancy lanes. Could also be shoulder running bus lanes during peak periods that could be implemented. So all those things will be on the table to refine and come up with a final draft and then a final corridor development plan. And we intend to come back to our TAC and the public in the spring to share those. Next slide. So this shares the overall timeline. So there is an open house, and I've got just more details on this later. And most of this I basically explained. Next slide. This just shows the time frame. So this corridor development plan completing this year, then we begin design this fall into early 2024 and go out to construction, basically project specific, but late fall of 2023 and in 2024 with completion targeted for 2025. And we are, next slide, planning for this open house. Actually, this is a typo. It's 5:30 p.m. on this Wednesday. Apologize for that. And we will have a survey that will be available following the meeting for about 2 weeks. And people can also, we'll record the open house and people can watch it afterwards. We'll have some live polling, Q&A session at the end after basically present what I've shared today to the public. And then we are happy to have any follow-up meetings with any staff or members of the county commission. But you can read more about the project on STA's website if you go to SpokaneTransit.com/I90. That's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Commissioner Kearns or Commissioner French, any questions? You both sit on the STA board, so I'm assuming that this has come before the board.
Great presentation. Obviously, STA is trying to put to use the funds that were allocated to it through the last ballot measure and stuff. And so, I think this is just one more example of how they're being good stewards of those money and trying to improve public transportation in the region. So, no, just keep on keeping on, keep doing the good work you're doing. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Carl, so you had scenario 1, 2, and 3 on as potential. Is there any way SDA could do all 3, or would it be cost prohibitive?
So those 3 routes would all work together.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, the how much we can implement to begin with. So there basically is some of the structure already exists, and so it's revising routes that exist. And then as far as STA moving forward is concerned, it does call for one of those to be all day 2-way. But the goal of having the overall corridor plan would be, as funding becomes available, to fill in that those other hours of service to make it run ultimately 7 days a week if possible, kind of balancing that with the ridership gains we would expect over time as it picks up an adoption.
Okay.
So at least one of those will be done 7 days a week, and then other parts of that will build over time. Yeah, I think the goal is to make sure that it is envisioned as a package.
Okay. And then what type of bus do you think would be on those routes? 40s, 60s, electric, hybrid, diesel? What do you envision being on those routes?
Yeah, at this point, we haven't gotten into the specifics of the bus. At one point, we considered it might be the same as the Cheney with double deckers. Although I think the frequency is more key. We don't have the same kind of surge demand you see with Cheney with students all leaving at the same time. But certainly anywhere we can deploy more electric buses or zero emission buses, its technology may evolve. But the near term, probably 40-foot buses on those corridors with some 60-foot vehicles as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. And Carl, I think for me, not having, this is my first presentation of this, so thank you. Good job with it. It's just, so this is just using existing roads that are already happening, and you're just taking buses and then it's using them to just go less stops. So that's kind of how it's the high performance. Is that correct?
Yeah, so new facilities. And so those facilities may include new transit priority measures. And so the county has been forward looking and preserving the right of way along the south side of I90. And so if there's there may be opportunities to leverage some of that. And when we look at the routes on the south side between the Green Acres exit and Liberty Lake, and but along I90, it wouldn't be a new road, but if there's an opportunity working with WashDOT for, like I said, shoulder running bus lanes during peak period, where if you're familiar, the different places in the Puget Sound, but one I know of is on US 2 across the Snohomish trestle. There are lanes on the shoulders that during peak period they're activated, they're available, and so if there's opportunities to do that where it is transit only or HOV only, so leveraging existing facilities as much as possible, but there would be key locations. We are looking at as far as the Argonne Road, seeking, because that is not an ST moving forward, but potentially seeking a partnership with Spokane Valley to explore ways they're looking to replace that bridge. It only has 2 lanes across it, get 3 lanes on the older southbound Argonne Road bridge. But if there's a future transit facility there to really integrate those so that transit kind of speed and reliability is baked into that project. So we're looking at potential regional mobility grant. We'll be going to the STA board in April to explore that possibility.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Carl, thank you very much. We appreciate you and for being on and presenting today. And good luck with the open house.
Appreciate it. Have a great day. Just
Thanks.
let us know if you have any other questions you want to follow up with. We're happy to help.
Okay, thank you. Hey, with that, that'll take us to our next item on the agenda is Chad Coles and Matt Zeracord to discuss property sale to East Valley School District and give us a briefing. I see Matt.
Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Matt Zeracord here. Ron, do you happen to have our presentation handy? Thank you. Okay, just wanted to talk to you a little this morning about a property surplus and directing a sale for Sullivan Road. Next slide, please. And this is kind of the vicinity portion. You can see this is phase 6 of our Bigelow Gulch project, the very east end. If we can have the next slide. This is that zoomed in a little more. The area outlined in red is the area we're talking about when we went through with this corridor, you can see we purchased all those properties that are highlighted in light blue. And then we took out the portions we needed to build the corridor. And now we're to the point, East Valley School District, who we negotiated with to get the property. You can see we kind of cut through their ball fields there. As a result of that, and also out of their desire just to redo their play fields in general, they are reconfiguring, and they have a big contract that I believe they've already put out to bid. And a portion of that, they would like to include the area that we have outlined in red, which is surplus from our Bigelow Gulch project. It's approximately 5 acres in area. We have an appraisal on it of $65,000. And what we're asking the board is the board okay with the concept of moving a directed sale to East Valley so that they can do their playfields project for the appraised value that we have of that? And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding it.
Are there any questions for Matt? Seeing none. Yeah, I guess it's just, so this is surplus property we have. It's going to help East Valley then with their ball fields to make sure that they're doing everything they need to, you know, since it attaches to their property. It seems like it's a good use of that for them.
Yeah, I mean, our project did significantly impact their fields, and they have to reconfigure everything, and they're pretty constrained. If you're familiar with their site, they have some high tension power lines running diagonally, kind of parallel to our Bigelow Gulch route. So they're constrained between these power lines and our new roadway alignment, and they've drawn up new plans for all their fields, and they're reconfiguring all their fields at the same time under a fairly large contract. And they need this piece of land in addition to make that project happen. And to me, it is a logical use of that remnant piece. You know, they are directly adjacent to it and kind of makes sense, but just want to make sure the board agreed with that recommendation and was okay proceeding with it.
Thank you. I see Commissioner Kearns, you took yourself off video or put yourself on video. Any questions?
No, no questions. Sounds good to me.
Thank you. So are you looking for head nods at this point to move forward, or do you need a motion?
Yeah, we're really just at the head nod part. We'll come back with a resolution that kind of frames it up and gives you all the details on it.
Okay, I see Commissioner French gave a head nod. Josh,
Excellent.
he was okay, and I'm okay. So you've got the 3 head nods to move forward.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Have a great day.
Well, with that, that got us back on track. So we are back on schedule. It is 9:30, and I think Mike Burgess, has he arrived? Oh, he has not arrived yet. Get back on track and time, and then Mike's not on. We will just give him a couple of minutes. Is there, I guess, is there any miscellaneous items that anybody has at this point? Scott.
Yes, I just want to let the commissioners know that the 8th Ave building, which was scheduled for closing today, is still on track. We just let the closing title company, gave them permission to do that. We've got the MOU signed in place with the buyer to allow the county to continue leasing some space inside that building as we are working on our alternative leases. We do have a lease that's signed for the Augusta property. And we also understand that the health district has signed their lease with Joppa. So this is scheduled to move forward and close today as we had anticipated.
Very good, thank you. I see that we are now joined by Mike Burgess. So we'll see if he gets there we go. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Very well. How are you all?
Good. So it is 9:30, so we're going to let you go ahead and take away the legislative update.
All righty. Just going to bang through this pretty quick. Want to have maybe a broader conversation about some transportation revenue package issues, stuff that's happening. Again, none of these are new topics. Just at the high level today, Monday the 28th, This is one of the next big cutoffs in session. This is the opposite House Fiscal Committee cutoff. So both Ways and Means and Appropriations are meeting today. I think the Ways and Means has 45 some odd bills to vote out of committee. Appropriations has the same. So today will be dominated by the budget committees, and then they will transition to the floor starting tomorrow for pretty much the remainder of session. And that session ends a week from this Thursday. So we're getting down to it. Some of this legislation, like I said, is not new to you, so I'll just run through it very quickly. 1799 is the Organic Materials Management Bill. It's going to be exec from Ways and Means today. I know there's still some concerns of cost implications for your constituents, maybe not as direct to county, but implementing something like this can be expensive, and that those concerns have been relayed to legislators. But I would expect this bill to continue to move at this point, at least from committee today. 1918, this is the reducing emissions from outdoor power equipment. That bill was amended last week to make it pretty much truly permissive, or excuse me, not permissive, but proactive, incentivized it. So some of the tax breaks will still be in place if you purchase that equipment, but the mandate is not in place anymore for county governments or local governments in general, public agencies to have to purchase emission-free equipment. So that has moved into a good direction for us. We'll have to monitor that going forward. Commissioner French.
Yeah, so those incentives, does that include buying gas generators to put out on the play fields to run the electric mowers?
I think it would fall into any of them, Commissioner, but I can let you know specifically if that's a question.
No, we're good, thanks.
Okay. 1703, modernizing the 911 communication system. Again, a good bill for the 911 system. It's passed the Senate now, so I don't know if it was amended in the Senate. If it were, it'd have to go back to the House, be concurred on, and go off to the governor. But this bill's moving. There's no concern there. 5042 was the GMA effective date of certain acts under the GMA. This is some are calling this kind of a vesting bill. We've talked about this the last 3 weeks. It is continuing to move through the House at this point. Last I checked, it had been voted from committee and is waiting floor action. It is at this point, it's a partisan affair. This is a priority bill for the environmental community and some of those folks. And given the realities of the legislature, I think you can tell why this bill is moving. The 5901, the economic tax deferral, again, was assumed in the Senate budget, going to be voted from the Senate Ways and Means Committee today. And that will just have to be brought in as part of the final budget agreement. Does not have a huge fiscal impact. I don't know why it wouldn't be included, but we'll have to stay tuned on that. Then the last one on the list, that this is the DOT leasing property. We had talked about this last week and had some questions about is it just Spokane centric? It is just Spokane centric the way it is. There are 2 amendments today. One of them is from Representative Walsh. He's from down, I think, the Aberdeen area. His amendment would say that the property would have to be offered to those that owned it before it was eminent domain. I think I'm saying that properly for the project. And then the second was by Representative McCaslin, and it's got some language in it about it being affordable housing that would be rented at below market rates. So there's just kind of 2 things associated with that bill now. I don't know that they're going to hang. Transportation meets starting at either 10 or noon today. And so we'll have to see how that plays out. I don't know that those necessarily impact the final goal of the bill. I don't know if you want me to dig in and get some more clarity about those amendments after they hang. If they hang, I'd be happy to do that. But at this point, I'm just observing that more than anything, unless you have any thoughts there.
Mr. French?
Yeah, so with the one amendment for Representative Walsh, if the property reverts back to the original property owner, does the original property owner have to reimburse the state for what they were paid for the property to relinquish it?
I believe they would. I think the way I read that amendment was they'd have the offer to purchase it back would have first refusal is the way I understood that. But let me check that and email you the actual verbiage of the amendment. I don't want to give you false information. Does that work for you?
Yeah, no, that works for me. I mean, otherwise you could end up with a checkerboard of ownership that would prevent you from being able to do any kind of sizable residential project or multifamily project and stuff. So it'd be interesting to see how they were going to handle the economics of that and what the impact would be to WashDOT to see all that revenue come back.
I'll email you with the result of the amendment hanging or not, and then with the amendments themselves under either circumstance. So I'll let you know that you'll hear
Thank
from me
you.
later today on those.
Thank you.
Yes. Then onto the well, let me just do operating. We'll go out of turn because we might talk about transportation a little more. On the operating side, the budgets have both been voted off of their respective floors. They are at this point, like I said, they're in fiscal committee today, but starting tomorrow and the remainder of the week, I'm sure they will be in pretty heavy budget negotiations to get themselves to a final agreement. You know, they need to kind of come to an agreement by next Tuesday evening, Wednesday, just from a timing standpoint. Even though we adjourned Thursday, they do need some advance time to make sure everything works before they would vote for the final operating budget, probably on that Thursday. I'm speculating on that. Again, though, you know, there aren't cuts in that budget. Obviously, they're dividing up new spending, new expenditures, pretty far-reaching new spending, but specific to cuts that would go to the county, they're not there right now. Onto the transportation side, you may have seen the news over the weekend that the proposal for the $2 billion of this, so the package itself was about 16.8 billion over 16 years. 2 billion of that was funded by a proposal to tax fuel that left Washington. Principally, it would impact, as I understand this, Alaska, Oregon, and Idaho the most. House Chair Jake Fye from Tacoma, he walked away from that proposal this weekend, that tax. And as a replacement, has proposed an annual sweep of the Public Works Assistance account of $100 million. So if you just do the math on that, it's a 16-year package. That's 100 million. It's 1.6 billion. So this 16.9 of the whole package is dropping down by 400 million. It will have to, because it doesn't just dollar for dollar, it doesn't pencil out. I haven't heard a lot of the details on what would be cut yet. I don't think any of that's been decided. But the question for you all, and I had asked your staff, and Scott was great. Unfortunately, I sent it to Kevin Cook. I'd forgotten he'd retired. So, but Scott forwarded it to Chad this morning. Doesn't sound like the county accesses the Public Works Assistance account very much, if at all. So it's not a hugely impactful account for you all. A lot of your partners in local governments, the cities, water districts, they use those for pretty small loans, as I understand them. Scott, maybe you can help me on that one a little bit about how much, what they utilize those for. I see Chad jumping in there too. So if you want to let the commissioners know kind of the impact of that Public Works Assistance account just broadly, and then county, that'd be helpful. And then we can keep talking.
Chad, I'll let you go. You had responded back to the mic this morning. Let you give a little context first.
Yeah, just repeating what Mike said. We haven't used it. Spokane County has not used that, as far as I can tell, ever. But you know, the concept that you drain a little water from the pool, not everybody swims as well. So you know, we're all fighting for those dollars.
And I think broadly for the county, it probably is impactful because it's from my recollection, it's a very low interest facility that provides monies to smaller municipalities and water districts to be able to perform some projects, get them done at kind of below market rate for interest rates. It's very favorable to them. So they certainly could have impacts across the county with other jurisdictions to be able to access as well. We may not do that here specifically for the county. I know others do and rely on that as a affordable source of funds for them.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, Mike, isn't this just a reintroduction of what used to be the Public Work Trust Fund program where, you know, the state would provide loans or in some cases grants to smaller jurisdictions that otherwise didn't have a tax base to pay for infrastructure, specifically water and sewer were the main ones that they did. And then the legislature came in and stripped all the money out of it and stuff and got crucified for doing that. But isn't that all this is? Just
Yeah.
Repackaged Public Work Trust Fund?
So you're correct, Commissioner. I'll fill in the blanks as best I can. So you are correct that this clearly centers on the Public Works Assistance Account. And about, geez, I want to say about 10 years ago, there's 3 sources of funding that fund the Public Works Assistance Account. There's REIT, some solid waste, carve out of the solid waste tax, and there's a third. Scott, maybe you know that one. The third off the top of your head, maybe not. The legislature diverted those 3, a portion of those 3, to help fund their general fund budget about 10 years ago. And then that diversion generates about $350 million a year. That diversion expires in 2023. So that $350 million is going to go back to the Public Works Assistance Account. The Public Works Assistance Account has been granting new loans, just not at the rate it would have had the sweep not happened. So, you know, you've got your small water districts, jurisdictions, they probably have a backlog of projects they would have wanted to do because they would have gotten, had the pot of money been bigger, the loan pot, they would have gone out and gotten those. So what the legislature is talking about doing now, and again, this is just the House, I've heard that the Senate is not as keen on this proposal, is taking that $350 million, using 200 a biennium or 100 million a year, and diverting that to backfilling the transportation package revenue that was lost by not doing the out-of-state fuel tax. Does that make sense? Sorry, it's kind of circular. So in some ways, doing this sweep, you know, you're taking 200 million a biennium of the 350. It leaves 150 to go back to the Public Works Assistance Account and continue to grow that. The issue with that, as I'm told, is that 150 that's remaining of the 350 after the 200 million is diverted to transportation, some of that 150 million is already spoken for. In terms of loans, it's encumbered probably by loan agreements. And keep in mind, this 350 million number I'm using is a loose number. It is not, I cannot tell you it's totally accurate. So I've had some discussions with my colleagues with the Association of Counties, and I don't know, I wonder how I don't know how the association is going to communicate it out, but there is a discussion going on internally about how do counties pivot on this proposal and maybe use it in the future to our advantage, and leveraging some additional dollars that would go back to things like crab potentially, or something that would be more of county use. There's some talk of culverts potentially. I don't know how many salmon culverts we have locally that are a backlog for you all to deal with. Just throwing that out. I'd be curious to know what that number is, but this is all in flux. You know, this has all happened over the last 48 hours. So wanted to keep you in the loop on that, that this discussion is happening and there's an effort to figure out a way to make this work the best for counties. You know, this is my opinion, but, you know, we're getting to the point where we're getting late enough in session that legislators now want to figure out a way to finish and get out on time. This transportation revenue package is an important step for the majority parties. They really want to do this, so they need to figure out a way to make it work. And this alternative funding source to this out-of-state fuel tax might be the way they leave. So we're trying to think of ways to make it as workable as possible for local governments.
So I guess my question is, it just seems like they're continuing to take away funding at the local level, you know, and keeping it at the state level and letting the state make the decisions, the legislators make the decisions to where the funds are going. I know, Chad, you know, there was the email that you sent out, but I mean, it just seems like it's just, you know, continuing to erode the money that's coming to state or to local governments and letting them use those funds.
But Yes, Commissioner, I think there, some of that characterization is certainly true. You know, that transportation revenue package, I think you all would agree was light on Eastern Washington projects, and then was very light in terms of what counties have access to in terms of your traditional funds to go back for maintenance, you know, and upgrades and things like that through CRAB, mostly for you, maybe Tibbs, more cities, obviously, but yes, I would say though that moving this money, in some ways, counties and local governments, because if this pot of money again wasn't diverted, because remember how I said it goes back in 2023, in some ways this just continues the diversion, but to a lesser extent. So
Except
then,
in 2023, they're probably going to continue to divert the whole thing because they've been used to.
well, and then you're correct in that I think that you all probably as stewards of the public dollar know that yes, economic times are good, but there's obviously some world events happening right now. And just in general, I don't know enough about the economy, but it goes up and down. And at some point we're going to hit a downward cycle, and the legislature is going to look for pots of money to backfill spending that's happening now. So that is absolutely a fair long-term concern.
So, Commissioner French and then Chad.
Yeah, so, you know, the majority of the legislators in the House particularly are from the urbanized areas and stuff. So sweeping this money out of the rural cities, smaller cities, especially on this side of the Cascades, they can do that without conscience, and they've done it in the past. So to be able to tap that money and use it for road projects on the other side of the state, not unexpected. So and I agree with you, Commissioner Cooney. In 2023, they'll continue the sweep the money for their legislative agenda on the other side of the state, unless there's a change in the House.
Commissioner, I would not disagree with your analysis.
And just weighing in terms of Spokane County, if I like the concept of providing some more money for County Road Administration Board. I think they do an excellent job of distributing it. Our impact as far as salmon culverts is zero. We don't have any. There's some dams in the way. So
Chad, you're not, so this came up earlier today that I think that the local government number of culverts statewide was like 8,000. I don't know if that number rings a bell with you, but you're saying there's no, this court case that happened, I know it was about state, but you have no local culverts that you need to repair.
we have local culverts that we need to repair, but none of them on the priority salmon list.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
None of them on the priority salmon list.
But you do have some you would do, but they're not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And are those just regular maintenance then?
Yeah.
Okay. That's helpful to know. Thank you.
Yeah, if we've got a backlog that's related to salmon, it's usually at the butcher's counter.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, so I will, in terms of next steps, commissioners, it's trying to figure this out. I think I'll keep talking to my colleagues with the association, figure out, what their response is going to be to this moving forward. I would imagine that you at your, through your levels of participation with WASAC might be hearing things too. I don't know what their plan is to get it out to their membership. So maybe wait and see on that. But if I know it's okay, but I'll reach out to you maybe individually about this, just because we're not doing a meeting until next week, and just kind of see where these things are, where the dust settles on what the next step is. So you'll hear from me on that, and then you'll hear from me on the DOT leasing property, the property leasing thing by the end of today or tomorrow morning.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Okay, you too. Okay, so next we are joined by Meg Winchester. Meg, I'm going to make sure that we have everybody promoted that you wanted promoted.
Thank you. Yeah, Mackenzie and Maureen are going to be on the call with me.
Okay, very good. So you're going to be giving us an update, and so I'll let you take it away.
You bet. We won't try not to take too much of your time, but we just feel it's really important to report back on the $200,000 of the CARES money that we received last year. Again, thank you very much, commissioners. It helped us immensely. And also just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea, just a real quick snapshot of what we plan to do for 2022 going forward. So I want to give Mackenzie credit. She put all this together, and she actually was the one who managed this $200,000 because we decided with that money that we would increase our little bit of funding that we had, marketing money, to increase our digital marketing. So that's what you're going to see as we move forward. Next slide, please. So just an overview from June to December, with the $200,000, we booked over $3.8 million in hotel room revenue for Spokane hotels. That's an 18-to-1 return on our advertising. And so we feel very strongly that the county is well on its way to recovering from the effects of 2020. And frankly, I would have put 21 there too, because it turned out to be a little bit tougher than all of us anticipated. So this $200,000 helped us immensely. We thought going into 21, we're going to kind of come out of this, but as we all well know, we didn't. So with this money, it helped us immensely to get out again to that drive market to the West Coast and really promote our Room to Roam campaign, which is our leisure campaign, which we will continue to run through 22. Next slide, please. So the primary goals of this CARES Act campaign were actually the same as we did in 2020. As we got into, especially starting in June, we knew that we needed to continue on with this heavy leisure push because that's where the people were mainly coming from. We did just a handful of group meetings in 2021, but so we really did a push with the leisure where we knew what we could get, more people coming in. So it was to encourage overnight stays in the Spokane region, promote activities that visitors could do safely. And just a caveat that safety is never going to go away as we continue in the future, even as we come out of the mask mandates and with COVID, pretty much being on the wane, that's still going to be a top priority for both leisure visitors and convention visitors. Position Spokane as a safe and interactive alternative destination to Portland and Seattle, and continue our Room to Roam creative campaign that brings brand to our life. And you'll see that we're going this year, as I show later in this, that we are shifting it a little bit and got some fun things going with the campaign. Next, please. So this is just an overview of the campaign. So in revenue, hotel revenue, we booked almost $4 million. Hotel bookings were 13,680. And the one thing that we like to note with this is that is just an initial booking. That doesn't, people could come in for 2 or 3 days, and that would count as one booking. And then arrivals, we actually look at what's going on with the airport when we pixel as well. So we had almost 6,000 arrivals. So the total impressions were a little over $250 million. And then the Adara is the hotel attributed impressions, and then the arrival list is the one where we track them from their origin all the way through to their stay, where they go while they're here, and then when they leave. And if anybody has any questions as we move through this, please don't hesitate to ask me. Happy to answer them. Okay, next slide. So these are our platforms, mainly for social media. We did Facebook and Instagram is where we consolidated most of the buys. As you can see, we stayed within our drive range. And then the metrics were really pretty fantastic. 3.3 million in impressions. The reach was over 500,000. The link clicks and all of that. If you want it a little bit more in detail, Mackenzie's the one to talk about it. I know enough to be dangerous when it comes to this, but she can drill way down if anybody has any questions with any of that. Okay, we can go to the next, please. And then our campaign were performed by platforms. We mainly use 3 platforms. We use Google. Google, as we know, is the most used way for people to search out anything. And so it's a responsive display, search, YouTube, video network. And as we know also, just as kind of a side note, videos are raising in that they are the most shared and most viewed on any kind of a social platform at this point. So we're doing a lot in our YouTube, especially as we move into this year, just to show our beauty and everything that goes along with it. But this, through Google, we have the ability to track hotel bookings, impressions, clicks. It's just a small snippet of it, but you can see we were able to capture 365, and then you can see the numbers with that. So all of these are really, really good numbers for the amount of money that we spent with that. And then next, Outbrain is our native, which is native campaigns are considered, they're supported blogs and those type of things. So people are looking and reading about your destination or something that interests them. And so this is keyword and contextual retargeting. And again, same areas that we targeted for this dollars within our drive market. And then C2 connections is our geo-targeting and our search and website retargeting. And so again, pretty much the same markets, the 250 miles of Spokane, looking at that. So all of these were very successful. Mackenzie and her team managed these really, really well. What's nice about being able to use this is they can turn on a dime with this. If they see one of them is not working well, they can shift the funding really quickly to go to another area. If somebody's performing really well, whether it's a destination, it's a platform, a specific blog or something like that, they can shift those dollars. So she does an amazing job of watching everything that's going on, both on our website, on these platforms and our social media with her team, and just did a really fantastic job with her. So I just really want to call out for all the hard work that she does with this and how closely she watches it and how well she manages the money that we have and to have to use. Next. So that's pretty much the overview of the campaign. Do you want me to just keep going, commissioners, and then talk about 22 and then answer any questions?
We can see any questions at this point for Meg. I don't see any, so why don't you go ahead and move forward, and then we can do questions at the end.
Okay, terrific. And this is just a real quick overview for roaming forward. These are our 2020 goals: to express our unique brand, to grow destination awareness, increase digital engagement by developing a creative social media and SEO strategy, deliver an increasing return on destination marketing efforts, increase earned media for both the destination and our organization, increase convention leads, bookings, and citywide group business. That is finally starting to come back, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but really focusing back on that now, which we kind of just monitored and managed the last couple of years. But as you can see, we started off with a bang with the sporting, and then we go into, we have 20 citywide conventions between the end of March through the end of the year that will be coming to Spokane this year. Increase community understanding and support for Visit Spokane, provide excellent service to all of our booked meetings, and provide information to visitors that enhance their experience. So looking at all of those are, you know, very large overarching goals, but of course within our marketing plan, we have tactics and strategies to meet all of these goals. And of course, we also have KPIs that we're looking at, kind of what you saw with what we kept up for the $200,000 marketing. We keep that on pretty much every dollar we spent, what the KPIs are for that. Next, please. So these are kind of fun. This is, we kept the Room to Roam campaign because it's been so very successful for us. And so we're going to keep that at least through this year and possibly into next year, but you've got to refresh everything. And I think that our team did a great job with this. So what they've done is they've taken our cast of characters and put them into collective nouns. So the collective nouns for monkeys and kangaroos are a troop. And so what we're doing is we're going to be designing all of our marketing around that, just to kind of give kind of fun fact with it. So kind of keep people's interest, something maybe they know or didn't know. Next, please. And did you know that whales, seals, and dolphins are a pod? So we're trying to do all of that. I won't tell you all the ones that are coming up. The first one that came to my mind is crows are a murder. I'm like, whoa, that'll be a great Halloween one to use. So we're going to be using those as we move forward. And we think that'll really kind of gauge people's interest, and we can really design it around each thing that we're promoting at different times. And then next, please. And I'm really proud of this. This is currently hanging on our visitor center right now. So we're working really closely with the Sports Commission, with the PFD on all the sporting groups that are coming into Spokane within this next couple months. And so they designed a really inclusive, as you can see, we've got a athlete in a wheelchair, and then we tried to do as many sports as we could. So it's a real big banner. So if you get a chance to see the visitor center in the Riverfront Park, we've got that. We're going to be using it in a lot of other areas too, but we decided to have a real big one just to welcome people here and let them know that we're happy that they're here as we come through the next couple of months of all the big sporting events. And of course, we hung it so that we could have it for this weekend for the U.S. Track and field. Next, please. And just really quickly to touch on our convention marketing. I think many of you know we had a replica of the garbage goat made, and we're using it for our convention marketing. And I just have to say it's become incredibly popular. We took it to PCMA, which is the largest association marketing group. It's kind of the one of the industry leader groups. And we had a booth there, and it was wildly successful. So twofold, we're using it for a cleanliness and safety, I'm going to say. So slam dump the junk. So really had people be able to feed their trash into the goat. It is fully operational, and it's just fantastic. But we also asked people to put what's your pain point right now. And so we asked them to feed their pain point in. So what we were able to do is come back and look at what the pain points are for conventioneers and meeting planners right now. Most of it was safety. Most of it, that was our main one. And so we know, if you can go to the next, please. And so knowing that we're part of the solution, not the pollution, but we're also keeping people safe. They were looking at being partners with people. So there was a multitude of things. So we have taken those and we're designing our marketing around those pain points that we're finding that planners are having this year. And so we're also talking with, of course, all of our partners and addressing all those. So in any of our marketing, in any of our proposals, in any of our execution of any events, we are addressing those among the other things, but really honing in on. And then we're trying to do is really a good job is really to look at each individual event as a special and ask them, what are your pain points? What can we do to solve those for you? So you can go about the business of planning your event, having a great event, and having all of your attendees walk away saying best event yet. And having people come because they know it's going to be safe and not possibly staying with that hybrid option as we move forward. And that's kind of it. Right now, I didn't want to take a lot of time, but kind of give you an overview. I'd love to answer some questions if anybody has any questions for Mackenzie. She's the expert at all things social media and web-based. But thank you for your time.
Very good. Any questions or comments for Meg?
Not a question, but just to expand on the airport, we are now rapidly approaching the 2019 numbers in terms of employment. So the recovery in terms of air flights into Spokane has been, pretty impressive, and we're one of the fastest recovering mid-market airports in the country right now. But the critical element of that is that the majority of that traffic has been tourist traffic and not business traffic. The business community has yet to take to the air and stuff. So once the business community decides that they're going to return to travel schedule typical to what they saw in 2019, we should have a pretty significant uptick in the community between business and tourism. But right now, a lot of the numbers that Meg is talking about are being driven by pure tourism numbers.
And it's 100% correct, Commissioner. In fact, I just had a meeting this morning with Todd Woodard, and we were talking about those things. We do have a pain point coming forward with that is transportation. And so we're doing everything that we can to work with Uber, to work with, any of the taxi aspects of it. And then one thing too that we're going to need to look at is our hotels are no longer offering shuttles for especially our convention attendees. So we're trying to look at ways that we can still offer some type of transportation that doesn't take really long, because as we all well know, your first impression is when you step off the plane. And we want everybody to have the best impression from the beginning to the end. And if they have to wait 2 hours or can't get transportation, you know, a rental car or an Uber or some type of transportation, we know we're already, you know, behind the 8 ball at that point. So just know that that's something we're going to be looking at. It's been brought up that we try to look possibly for some ARPA dollars because it's funding that we would have had to be able to support these efforts as we move forward. So just know that that effort's going to be coming up more and more, because the last thing we can do is afford to get a black.
Meg, you just unmute or muted yourself.
Sorry, is afford to get a black eye as we move forward, especially as we start to move more into this convention, because we all know the best visitor is a repeat visitor.
Yeah. Commissioner Kearns?
Yeah, I didn't realize the hotels weren't doing shuttles anymore. Is that just temporary? Or are they planning on bringing them back? Is it due to COVID?
We're not getting indications that they are. It's a huge cost to the hotels, both in you know, insurance, staffing, gas, the cost of the vehicle, and things like that. So it's interesting because I put out I sit on a CVB exec Facebook group, and I put it out and I said, hey, what is everybody else doing? Does anybody have any great ideas? Everybody came back, we're in the same boat as you, and if you come up with a solution, please let us know. So it's not a Spokane specific challenge, but it looks like almost all hotels, some of the limited service, just a couple of them are still providing that, but especially our convention hotels have not, and we have gotten no indication that they plan to possibly ever bring that back.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's becoming a concern, because a lot of these groups that we did confirm years ago before the pandemic thought that they would have this hotel transportation because they had it. Now, it wasn't written into contracts and everything. So it's something that we're trying to look at as visit, and then work with our hotels and possibly some private organizations to maybe at least have, and we know big groups are coming in, both sporting and conventioneers. So we're taking it very seriously as we move forward. So we were talking to Todd this morning about trying to look at some, you know, options that we can have. Everything costs money. So trying to look at how we're going to have that work.
Okay, thank you.
So, and I just have to say, you know, great job, Meg. Max and I were able to go down to the podium on Saturday, so we were watching the feed on Sunday on NBC Sports and saw your ad there. So yes, so I think it's great, and I think it you know, it just resonates with people, and great to have that since the track and field event was in Spokane. So. And great that NBC Sports was covering it, you know, on Saturday and Sunday, both from 2 to 4. So that was, you know, great exposure for us as well. So exciting.
Yeah, we could not even remotely touch paint for something like that. So those are the kind of things that just enhance so much by being the Sports Commission bringing that here, us having the ability to do some marketing. It's nothing but great for everybody, for a county.
Yeah, no, so thank you for all that you're doing. We appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you all too. So if we don't say it enough, you know, thank you.
Any other questions for Meg? Seeing none, just thank you very much and keep up the good work.
Great. Thanks for the time, y'all.
Okay. So we're about 5 minutes ahead of schedule. I don't know if the sheriff is on yet. No. Okay, Scott, I'll see if there's any other miscellaneous items that you have.
I don't have anything else at this time, Commissioner.
Okay, and then I did get a note that Ashley, so we are going to be canceling the executive session on the performance of public employee.
Correct.
Okay. So we will not be doing that part of the next presentation with the sheriff. Well, then we may just take I don't know if the sheriff's going to get on. We've got about 4 minutes. Oh, I think Ozzy is coming in. Oh, he's going to be in person. So we will see.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I've got a hard stop at 11:30. I've got a noon meeting up on the north end of the county.
Okay. We should be done sooner than that. I think Ozzy's our next one, and I think if we don't have any other miscellaneous, then we're gonna be able to stop as soon as the sheriff is done.
Thank you.
Chair, I think we have one item with Mark McLean. That is a pending and potential.
That has been canceled.
Okay.
Mark is not feeling well today, so PC Evans is here in his place.
Excellent. Got it.
And I think we will delay that until next week is what I'm understanding.
Okay.
That's correct.
He should be here.
I did check out front and I did share.
Well, then we will just take a few-minute break and be right back as soon as the sheriff gets in the conference room.
There's two that have the same format, but this is
Okay.
two different presentations. This is the first one.
Okay, so we have been joined by the sheriff and Under Sheriff Middlestad. So we will go ahead and start our presentation. Ozzy, I'll let you start.
Brian, if we could bring up the one that's titled
Lateral
bonuses.
bonus.
Okay. If we could go to the next slide. Board, what we're doing is we're strategizing for this year's recruitment. And it's critical that we are able to hire at least 35 people this year. We have 50 that we need to hire, but it's critical that we hire at least 35. The overtime analysis that we've done shows that we're pushing a lot of overtime to the point where our employees aren't answering phone calls anymore. We're at saturation point with them being willing to do overtime. And overtime, excessive overtime can cause a whole bunch of issues that we really do not need to even deal with. Use of force is impacted by the overtime because once you start getting burned out, things start, a cycle starts that you don't have as much patience as normally would because all you're doing is out there working and doing the same thing every day, and there's no real break. So statistically, it's proven that health issues, use of force issues, and mental strain on deputies that are working on a continual basis is not all that great for the county in a ton of different areas. Liability just being one. Next. So where we are from last year, we had a very good year as far as applications. 758 applications. We were able to hire 30 people. Now, some people might say, you had all these applications and only hired 30. Traditionally in law enforcement, for every 100 applicants, you only end up with about 3 viable candidates. By the time you go through all the backgrounds, all the polygraphs, all the mental health, the psychological reviews, the financial issues, you only end up with about 3 out of 100 that are good candidates. We actually beat that mark if you take a look at what we were able to hire. And my job isn't just simply to fill this agency with people working. My job is to fill this agency with the right people working here. We will not lower standards the way other agencies have. Other agencies are now hiring people with quote unquote low-level felony convictions. That will never happen here. Not as long as I'm here. We will not hire our own problems. You cannot hire people that have felony records. You cannot hire people that don't have integrity. You cannot hire people that do not meet our psychological requirements for this job. If I had our psychologist with me today, what he would tell you is that being a deputy sheriff in Spokane County is much more demanding than being a police officer in the city of Spokane, because you have a totally different dynamic. Our deputies are out there very much by themselves, much longer than a police officer in the city of Spokane is. I can attest to that. When I worked on patrol, I knew, depending on what areas of the county I was in, my backup was anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes away. So you have to hire the right people with the right temperament, people that are able to communicate with people, people that are able to de-escalate. And we have to be able to do that for a much longer period without help than our peers in the city. In the city of Spokane, something happens, you have 10 cars show up immediately. Something happens out in the county, you're praying for your first car to show up within 30 to 45 minutes. So I think we really did a good job last year. That is just too shy, I believe, of our best recruiting year, which was, I believe, 2018. And to match that after 2020, that shows you how good the campaign that we ran last year truly was. Next slide. These are where for the individuals that we hired came from. So in the Northwest, 11, California, 9, Western Central Washington, 5, Montana, South Carolina, Maryland, Virginia, and from our local area, we had 1. But more telling is what the reach of our campaign really was. So next slide. These slides actually show you where the vast bulk of those applicants for laterals came from. Western Washington, Eastern Washington, WSP. So we targeted heavily in Western Washington. And I would remind the board that almost every agency that's listed up there, except for the smaller agencies, make more than we do. And they were still interested in coming to work here. So now that we have the wages that we have, hopefully we'll be more competitive on the west side. because even though we had all that interest, some of those folks fell off because they were like, all right, this is a pretty significant cut in pay for us to come over here. And that cut in pay is magnified in that your last final average salary goes into your retirement. So leaving there and coming here at lower wages actually hurts their retirement. They stay there, they have a bigger paycheck at retirement. They can come over here and live a lot cheaper than they lived over there. At least that was the philosophy, because our housing market is really skewing our ability to claim that this is an affordable area to live, because our housing market has started to erode that attraction for us. Next. Idaho, Oregon, California. Next one. Colorado, mind you, we targeted Colorado. When we had targeted Colorado, we had splash over into surrounding areas, Arizona, Nevada, Florida, New York. Next. And I broke it into regions of the country. So you had from the west, Montana, North Dakota, Midwest, you had Iowa, Michigan, Kansas, another one from Michigan, and the Northeast, Pennsylvania, Chicago, New Orleans in the Southeast, Southwest, Dallas, Texas, and then two others that we never, for some reason, they didn't log what state the Henderson Police Department came from. Then you had Border Patrol. Next slide. So when we take a look at the campaign, as you can see, we were very successful in getting applicants. The next one shows you entry-level applicants and how they shaped out as far as why they weren't hired. On the next slide. February 21, we raised our signing bonus to 15,000, which I really believe helped us greatly. The ask now is to raise that to 25,000 because we have many agencies within the state and out of the state that have gone to the 25,000 mark. 25,000 isn't the top mark, folks. Your top mark is 50. And we're not proposing to go there. We're proposing just to stay within the realm of what we're seeing against the ones that we have to compete against. Next slide. These are just examples of the things that we did: billboards, social media. Next one. Next one. And this one shows the $20,000 to $30,000 lateral bonuses that are being offered by Seattle, Portland, Marysville, Washington, very small department, and I believe they're at 30. Vancouver, Washington, Everett, Kent, Linwood, and Chehalis. Those are the ones that we are really competing against. And those are the ones we're trying to entice from. And the reason Seattle went to 25,000 was to pull in as many people as they could as quickly as they could, because of the COVID mandates, the shots, the vaccine, they lost a lot of people. King County just lost 39 last week. And if you're reading about King County right now, they are in crisis. They're in crisis to the point that they're offering $4,000 just to stay for the year. There are agencies out there that are actually recruiting and using their current staff as recruiting tools. If one of our staff members get somebody to come to work here and that individual passes probation, that individual would, that recruited them would get a $5,000 recruitment bonus. That is another tool that's being used out there. I think it's very self-explanatory as to why we want laterals. They don't have to go to the academy. We can, in many cases, get them out on the street within 3 months of hiring them, and then worry about getting them to the lateral academy during the 6 months that we're allotted to. Laterals are the things that we really need to target this year. And again, in order to get laterals, you're going to have to help us with that signing bonus. It takes a lot to get somebody to move. It's an expense to move. And as I noted, some of these areas we're recruiting from are making more than we, regardless of the wages that we currently have. The next one, I'm going to let you guys read the last two on your own. It just really outlines what we're doing and the overarching philosophy that we have of not just the old style of recruiting, but we are using every aspect that we can within the sheriff's office and outside to get people to come to work here. We are getting ready to put billboards up in LA and San Diego, Southern California, because a lot of people are leaving those areas right now, and LA actually runs a risk of losing about 4,000 law enforcement officers this year. There's a lot of reasons that they're leaving. The quality of life in Southern California and California is collapsing as we speak. We all know that. You're watching a mass exodus from those states. We're hoping that we're going to be able to pull people here, and some of our strongest recruiters are the people that we've already brought into this agency, reaching back and going, this is a great place to work. Y'all need to come up and work here. So we need to do our best to entice that philosophy to get there. So the bottom line on this ask is simply this. We need to go from 15 to 25,000 to be compatible with the people that we are competing against. And we need to be able to get entry-level individuals. So we would like to go from $5,000 to $10,000 signing bonus with them. Once again, we're going to do this with our salaries and benefits, because right now we're 28 down. That means roughly $280,000 a month we're saving in salary and benefits. We can pay for this entire campaign and hit our 35 mark with just 1 month of that. And as you know, we turned back to the county about $1 million last year. That's after the county was very generous with us in helping us use some of that surplus money we had at the end of the year to cure more of our one-time expenditures issues. So this year, if we're successful, we're going to be able to meet that 35 mark again, but we have to be more competitive than we have ever been to do that. If we're not successful, or we're already having trouble staffing districts. FMLA leave is killing us right now. We have what, 4 getting ready to go out for 3 months. We can't sustain that. On top of the fact that, you know, part of the arguments I've heard during the discussions before coming to the board about this is, well, we just raised wages and everything else, and shouldn't we just wait to see if that's going to work? Okay, you raised wages, outstanding. I really appreciate that. But in the last 4 weeks, we've lost 8 people. We've lost the bulk of those people because they are going, I don't want to work in law enforcement anymore. The wages are not significant enough to keep them here. We lost one that said, you know, I just need to get some things sorted out in my personal life. I'd like to come back to the agency. However, with the current environment we work in the state of Washington, under these new reform laws, I don't want to work here. These reform laws have done more damage than people are willing to recognize and talk about. Despite the fact that we have spiking crime and everything else, the amount of erosion in law enforcement morale is really incalculable right now in reference to what these particular reforms have done. And money, I don't know how much money it's going to take to fix the problem. On the East Coast, which traditionally had lower wages than we have, they're paying $120,000 for entry-level patrolmen, because that is how bad it is trying to get people to come to work. In 2016, I stated, society, you need to be careful because you're on the verge of breaking something. That was after Ferguson, that was after Dallas, after Baton Rouge. In a 1 week period, we lost 10 police officers due to radicalized hate. Last year, we lost 73 law enforcement officers, the highest level since 9/11 to felony assault type crimes. 350, I believe, police officers were shot last year. The true comparison as to what happened to law enforcement isn't 9/11. You need to go back to 1973 and look at how many police officers were shot then and how many police officers were shot today, and they were shot for the same reasons, radicalized hate. That's the environment these people are working in right now. And that's what we need to try to overcome. Our challenge internally is to help our staff understand that this community values them, that this community wants them. And we've been able to do that greatly because of your help, board. When in 2020, when you put out a resolution saying you support law enforcement, you do not realize the impact that had on our staff. When the Valley City Council followed suit, you do not realize the impact that had on our staff's morale. 2021 comes around and our state basically unraveled all that good morale. We are in a competition right now to not only recruit, but to retain. I met with sergeants last week and made it very clear to them, because they're concerned about manpower. My question to them was, what are you doing to help us with retention? What are you doing to help us maintain the morale of the folks out there? Because that is a two-pronged problem we have to solve. Recruitment's just one. But when I lose 8 people unsuspectedly in 4 weeks, that becomes a different type of crisis for us. So in order for us to be successful, we need to do and match what other agencies are doing. And in talking to staff, I went, look, this is not an MBA, research type project where you can just simply cure this by looking at the beans and counting the beans. You're looking at very deeply rooted social and, quite frankly, mental health issues that we're dealing with right now concerning law enforcement. Your traditional aspects of, well, money and everything else may or may not work. But the one thing that you can do for us is to show law enforcement that they are valued, and that does resonate with them, that, all right, they're willing to pay me to come here to uproot my family and move. That's what that $25,000 really amounts to, because it's fairly expensive to move a family, as we all know. It's fairly expensive to get somebody to get out of their comfort zone, even though they may not like where they're at, and come to work somewhere else. Especially when everybody in the country is recruiting the same people. You have to get to the point where you are distinguishing ourselves with our competition. Our competition is where we are trying to get. So I don't think this is a great lift. It's not an added expense to the county. I know that there were some naysayers that stepped out last year. Lisa Brown and Amber Waldrop and the sort. The thing is, the proof is in the pudding. What we did last year was very phenomenal in a year that was one of the toughest recruiting years that we've ever seen. We're going into 22 in the same type of environment. I know that the way that we are going to approach this will help us, and will help us meet that critical goal of 35. I'm not going after the full 50 that we need. I need to critically get to 35. Without getting to 35, we cannot maintain our service levels. That's how bad this is. 35 is bottom line. We'll catch the other 15 the next year, but I have to get 35 this year. Any questions?
Not seeing Al or Josh come off video. So I guess or Josh, do you have a question?
I do. Just a couple questions. Sheriff, can I ask, at the $15,000 level, how many of the recruits got the full 15,000, and how, percentage wise, how many got the full amount and how many got less than the 15,000?
Because it was like you
didn't
paid
start
part
till
up front and
February.
then part,
Yeah.
part after a
So
year.
it would have been everybody that got hired after February when we raised it.
Mhm.
And we didn't hit our stride with our campaign until April. So the bulk of that you see up there came out of the April through December timeframe, which was because of the $15,000 that you gave us in February. We really weren't able to get all the information out, design all the packets, do the social media and everything out, get that campaign organized until April, because it took us March to get in contact with our vendors and everything else, get redesign the ad packages and everything else. So pretty much everybody was at that $15,000 mark.
Okay. And that, I mean, and I'm sure you didn't do a survey, but I mean, in your conversations with all the folks that came over the entire 12 months of last year, I mean, what was the common theme that you heard from them on why they wanted to come here? I mean, and I'm sure it differed, depending on where they came from, kind of where they were in their career status, family situation. But I mean, was there a common thread of why people chose Spokane County over any other jurisdiction across the country?
Actually, Commissioner, I asked that question of all the new hires when I spend an hour with them after we swear them in.
Mhm.
That's the time that they get to ask me any question they want about the agency, about me, whatever. I reserve 2 questions. One, what are your goals and how do we help you get where you want to go? And 2, why did you choose us? Could have made more money by going to work for SPD. The 80% of the answers for that are very simple. They want to come to work for an agency that has the reputation that we have. Now, your hiring bonuses and all that did factor in because it helped them move and get the willingness to come here. But it's the reputation of the agency really that they come to work for.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, so thank you for the presentation, Sheriff. So a couple questions for you, and this is more to gain knowledge for myself and understanding of the situation that it is to the challenge. So please don't take it as a challenge. But for folks that are in Southern California, specifically in San Diego, what is it that would cause them to move away from a community that doesn't know what snow is to a community that does? And then the second question is, have you thought about reaching out to disgruntled border control officers, either in Arizona, New Mexico, or even possibly in that western part of Texas, El Paso, and that Rio Grande stretch, as potential candidates? Do they make good sheriff deputy candidates? So 2 questions for you.
I think that the answer to the first one is very simple as to why everybody else is leaving Southern California. It's the environment that those areas have evolved to. You have areas in LA that are near third world, and the violence is off the charts. We are seeing an increase in violence here, but it's nowhere near what they're seeing down there. Quality of life for their families, that's another big reason they come here. They have families. They don't want to raise those families in that environment. We still have something that they value, and that is a relatively safe community, as long as we continue to work towards keeping it that way. Commissioners, I'm telling you, we had another drive-by shooting last night. We can't almost get through a weekend anymore without another drive-by shooting. So we need to do everything in our power to insulate our community from becoming what they're running from. And it really comes down to, they don't want their families raised in that environment. They want to come to a little bit more stabilized environment. As to the Border Patrol and law enforcement really aren't the same jobs. Totally different skill sets, totally different mindsets, and totally different jobs. Do they make good law enforcement? Yeah, we had one apply, but I don't know if we can bring them in as lateral officers simply because they have a federal commission, because that commission at the federal level is not recognized by the state. Plus, the jobs are totally different. Law enforcement at the local level is very much different than the Border Patrol aspects. And at the federal level also, their retirement very much more robust than our retirement.
Sure. Commissioner French, to your question about San Diego, I agree it's a great place to live, to visit. What I've found in several of the laterals we've got from San Bernardino County, San Diego County, in that area, is that either they're generational law enforcement, perhaps down there, and their retired family members moved up to North Idaho, Eastern Washington, and love it, and they pull them back in. And actually, there's several that grew up here and went down there to get hired to work in a busy, exciting environment, and very quickly learned that that's only fun for a couple of years, and then you really start getting burned out the day-to-day doldrum of working in that environment. So they've come up, and Border Patrol, unfortunately, we've tried to recognize FLETC, which is the Law Enforcement Training Academy, as a lateral, and we have not been able to do that with CJTC. The scrutiny among the syllabus between the academies and the state, there used to be reciprocity. Now CJTC requires us to pull their syllabus and evaluate every single academy, the lateral applicants, which has slowed it down a little bit, but we're trying to work through that. So yeah, Border Patrol does, we have had several applicants, but quite honestly, some of them don't want to go to an academy again when they've already been doing the job for some time. And that's a disadvantage, unfortunately, that we're trying to deal with.
Thank you.
So a couple of questions for me is, thoughts on doing a sliding scale on where people are coming from for that 25,000 or not?
It really doesn't work that way. You're either going to have a $25,000 signing bonus, or you're not going to have it. I could only imagine the amount of craziness that I'd have to live through as far as, well, wait a minute, I'm a lateral officer and I was only worth 15. What makes him worth 25? It doesn't work that way.
When are we going to have some of that people that haven't gotten their full, because the laterals aren't they like they get so much the first
They do.
when they get hired, and then
Half
so
and
much
half.
after the first year, and we haven't hit that yet.
Right, and Commissioner, no, you're not, because they knew that was the standard when they got hired. Now, in order to be competitive, we have to up that game to match our competitors. We are competing against these people. They make more money than we do on a base salary, and they're paying more as far as an incentive to get there. That's who I have to compete against. If I can't compete against them, we're at a severe disadvantage. And those people that get that versus the ones that came in at the 15, I think if you ask the ones at the 15, do you need help on the street? Their number one thing is we need to get more people on the street. We have to critically get 35 people this year. I cannot miss that mark, and I have to use everything that I can to get there. We can prove that our philosophy worked very well last year. The only reason it's worked very well is we had the tools to do it. Everybody upped their game, Commissioner. They did. Everybody upped their game. They saw what was going on. They saw it and they upped their game. We have to stay at that cutting edge. And again, we're not asking to be paid more as far as the bonus. We're asking just to be where they are.
So there's two things. So for the lateral side, if you consider half of it, they get half of the money on their first check once they're employed and they go through the process. Especially if they, if they move from out of the area, they're probably going to have a month gap at least of salary. And that covers that 12,500 might cover their salary they're missing to pay all their expenses. Most people in law enforcement don't get in it to make a ton of money, right? And so they probably don't have a lot of cushion there. So, and then also their additional living expenses and trying to find a place to live, and the travel, we don't pay for their travel back and forth during the application process. So they're incurring those bills. And as far as entry level goes, we've definitely, the word is out that we've been hiring forever. To get someone to take the risk of switching careers, if they're a blue collar worker or even in an office job, and they're like, you know what, I want to serve my community. I want to work for the sheriff's office. I really like what they're doing. Bumping it to $10,000 is almost, they get half again on their first check. They're taking a huge risk by going into a career where there's no guarantee. They're constantly tested that first year relentlessly, because we need to make sure they have the skills and the training to do the job on the street. And so if they go from that comfortable position into a risk and going out and doing something, if it doesn't work out for them, now they're starting over essentially. And that's a big leap of faith and a big risk for someone with a family, the type of people we're trying to recruit, life and experience and some skill sets. So that is why the entry level as well, why we consider that, is trying to get people to consider it seriously and trying to incentivize it somehow for people that may have not really thought about it before. Because I think our department is much better at getting people from all different areas, all kinds of experience, rather than just one particular one.
And on the entry level, we're also competing against private sector. They're giving bonuses. We lost a deputy that wasn't at retirement age because of all the things going on in law enforcement, compounded upon family was like, why are we still doing this? $15,000 signing bonus to go drive a truck.
Oh, no, I mean, that's happening across the board.
Exactly.
Everybody. I mean, it's not just law enforcement specific. As you know, it's called the Great Resignation right now.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, we're seeing it everywhere.
I wish I would have graduated from high school during this time. When I graduated, there were no jobs. And now it's like, and I hear people say, well, these kids have no hope. What do you mean? They can write their own tickets if they just apply themselves.
Yeah. No, exactly. So I guess my thought was, didn't we put a sunset on this before? So I mean, do we need to extend where we're at? Do we do this through the end of the year?
We would recommend that you extend it to July of next year. The reason we need July of next year, to complicate the fact that we're losing people that we didn't anticipate losing, we are fading into a very critical time where the last of the baby boomer aspect for us is going to hit in the next 3 years. You know, we have a big block of people that can retire in the next 3 years, and they are going to retire. I mean, the only reason we were able to stem what could have happened to us this year was because of the wages that we received. They're willing to stick around one more year to get that last final average. However, we also have people that I've been talking to going, look, think about your last final. It's not good enough. I don't care how much money, I'm done, I'm
Right.
out.
I mean, but those are people that it's not going to matter what the
No.
money is. So,
But
I mean, it's
you do have
reality.
a big section that we're going to walk this year. They won't walk this year, but there's nothing holding them once they get that last average. And that means your early 6 months of 23, those are going to be critical recruiting time. And so you want to maintain these bonuses to July of next year to get us past that retirement wave and get us able to replace that wave.
So I guess if we look at that, you're going to include that in your budget.
Yes.
You would have that.
We'll still have.
This is a budget neutral event
Right.
for this year.
And it will be next year because we're not going to meet 50. We're going to go into 23, at least 15 light. And that's assuming everybody that we hire passes the training car and everything. That's assuming we don't lose anybody else. That's a big assumption at that point. Realistically, you go into 23, 20 behind. 20 behind gives you plenty of cushion to go to July.
We have about 30 that are eligible to retire in the next 2 years. And they haven't been staying till 57, 58 like in the past. We have people retiring at 50 to get out of it.
And that's penalties.
That's
If you
kind of
retire
changed.
at 50, you're taking penalties.
Well, and some of that we as county commissioners can't control because it is the state that is driving those people to leave because
Yes.
of the state laws. So
It's just the delta that we're
Yeah.
thinking in our head about where we're going to be in addition to the unexpected.
yeah.
And everything we do, we try to plan into the future and not have to come back on a ad nauseum basis going, all right, you need to do more, you need to do more, you need more. we've looked at our trends. Our trends dictate that by July of next year, we should be in a much better place than we are today. But if we don't do things to insulate that and help us get there, we'll be in critical condition come next year in July.
So any other questions for the sheriff? Okay. I guess, so Scott, is this something we wanted, I mean, I guess I just want a little, I mean, I understand it. I just need a little time to make sure we've got the numbers and stuff. So we take this back up next week. We need to make a
Yeah,
decision.
whenever the commissioners are ready, we would just need an action to revise the policy that's in place right now for the retention, or for the sign-on bonuses.
Okay, and is that something that we could just put on the agenda or
Sure.
take back up next week? I mean, I think we just want to get this figured out right away so quickly. So I would say let's put it back on the agenda for next week. Commissioner French?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I heard you right, Sheriff. In our recruitment efforts, we do not pay for relocation costs. Is that right?
No, we do not.
Okay.
That's the big thing about these bonuses, is they really do help defray those relocation costs. And right now in our area, those relocation costs can be fairly significant because you're living in a motel for quite a bit of time before you can transition into some kind of stabilized housing. So that's why we need to try to maximize for these folks.
Thank you very much.
If I could add, so just to confirm as we wrap up, so it's from 15 to 25. You can pay for this within your existing budget this year, and due to the positions you envision not being filled next year, due either because they haven't been hired or through retirements, you can cover this. You anticipate being able to cover it under your existing, or what your budget will be next year as well. So you're not asking for additional funds. You're just asking for permission to give the bonus at a higher amount, correct?
Correct, Commissioner. We can cover this out of our existing budgets. And it would be 25 for the laterals and 10 for the entry level.
So the entry level will be going from 5 to 10.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I'm just gonna I mean, this to me sounds like this is how you would like to utilize your budget to operate your department. I mean, I guess I don't really see what the big issue is here. I mean, these funds have been allocated to an independently elected official to utilize them in the operations of their department. I don't really see how this differs from if the sheriff was going out to purchase a piece of equipment or another piece of type of training for his officers. I mean, I know it's not complete apples to apples here, but I mean,
I think it's just because we have a policy on signing bonuses and
Yeah.
that.
no, I mean, I get that, but it's like, I mean, I don't know. I'll just go on the record and say I'm fine with it. If you want, I'll support it.
And just so you know, commissioners, I did talk to budget office, and Mr. Petrovich doesn't have great heartburn. So we did try to cross as many T's and dot as many I's before we got here. Gary, if you want to talk about the retention bonuses, feel free.
Well, and just a second, Gary, before you go, Commissioner French, your comment.
Yeah, so I'm kind of leaning toward the same position that I think Josh is at, as long as there's no budget impact. And this is a way to make sure that we can execute on recruitment. Probably the only heartburn I have is you know, after I and my fellow baby boomers are gone, who is the target then? Because, you know, we're not going to be around to kick anymore. I'm just kidding. Just, I can't imagine you got many people of my age still on the force, but maybe there are. Thanks.
Gary, I see you've unmuted.
Yes, when the sheriff approached me and we started talking about this, I looked at a worst case scenario. The incremental increase in what he's asking for is $10,000 from 15 to 25. And worst case is all of them are laterals that he's hiring instead of just new hires. And so the maximum financial commitment on his end would be $175,000 this year and $175,000 next year, because the bonus is split into two periods. And so when you take a look at his budget, does he have the ability to absorb $175,000 in his budget in either of those years in a maximum coverage scenario? I believe he does.
Yeah. And I think I'm going to be in favor of it. I would just like to see the policy, so that way we know in what it is in writing before I agree to move forward. So that's just making sure that we've, you know, again, on our part, that we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's to know what the policy is actually saying, because had I not asked the question, we didn't know what the sunset was going to be. So I just want to make sure that what the policy is going to really state.
All right, any other questions?
Do you want us to work?
Sorry.
Do you want us to work on that modification and send it to Scott?
Yeah, I don't know if Ashley, do you help work through that policy?
Yeah, I draft the policy. So we have it in our handbook. I'll get it updated. And then I'll get the resolution prepared with it as well and have it in your packet for next week.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you. We want hard copies. I can leave these here for the other commissioners.
Okay, yeah, they're here, so you can take them.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. I think Josh and Ella are in their offices.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, are there any other miscellaneous items for today? So seeing none, then we will conclude our meeting. It is 11:04, and we will see everybody back tomorrow on Tuesday for the 2 o'clock. Oh, Commissioner French, you're.
No, just reminding you that I'll be traveling the rest of the week.
Oh, okay, I apologize. I didn't know that. Thank you. So we will not see you tomorrow. Okay.
Nope.
Thank you. Okay. So then we will be back tomorrow, Josh and I, for the 2 o'clock consent agenda. Thank you very much. Have a great day.